Hello everyone, welcome to this session. I'm Cedric, product owner responsible for the JavaScript framework. Today I will show you how we made Odoo blazing fast. But first, don't hesitate to scan the QR code. You will be able to write down your questions and we will answer them just after the session. Let you a few seconds. Okay, so let's start with a concrete example. As you can see on the screen, it's a very simple view. Basically, it's just a list of contacts, nothing complicated, and it looks very familiar, I hope. But in fact, behind all this screen, in this screen, we have lots of complexity. First, you will find the menu. Basically, it will be used to browse the applications. Then you will find the system tray, where you will be able to reach the notifications, activities, user menu, and so on. Then you will find the control panel that contains lots of stuff. Ability to create new record, actions, search, pager, view switcher, and much more. Then you have the view structure itself. Basically, here it's just a list with the fields displayed in columns. And finally, we have the list of the records with sometimes some complexity, domains, widgets, counters, and so on. So, as you can see here, it's quite complex, quite vast, and we can perform a quick analysis based on that. All you can see on the screen should be loaded by the browser. And what we noticed, sometimes, depending on the network, depending on the amount of data to load, it could be very slow. So we can say that here there are lots of static data, static elements, such as menus, views. Sometimes you have lots of master data that rarely change, and sometimes you have useless data when you are browsing, such like counters and so on. So based on this analysis, we define that we can speed up this load because lots of elements are very static. We can make the assumption that we don't need to load them every time, and we will define strategy to rely on the browser storage with the aim to speed up Odoo. So, to reach this objective, we can rely on different ways to store the information in Odoo. So the browser gives us the ability to rely on the session storage. Basically, it only works from the current tab, so it's limited to the current session. And it's very useful for temporary data. Basically, if the user previously made an input on a formulary and so on, it could be useful to retrieve it when you go back. But in that case, it's not very useful. The second thing is the local storage. Here, in the opposite of the session storage, it's persistent, so it can be useful. But the problem is that we have only 5 megabytes per region. So it's a very low size and very low capacity. However, it could be useful to store user preference, such as default columns displayed on the lead view. And then we can rely on the IndexedDB. In fact, it's just an update database in the browser that is reachable with NoSQL. And as you can see here, we can store lots of data. Basically, it can go to 80% of the hard disk drive, so it could be huge. And the main purpose of such a technology is to store offline data. So we made the choice to rely on this technology. And then we have to define a strategy. In theory, when we browse Odoo, basically we will first open a view. And in our case, we will call the server to get the data and display them on the screen. Our strategy is to get this data and to store them in the browser. And then later, the times pass, we can come back on this page, and then we will reload this page, but we will rely on what is stored in the browser. In the same time, we'll call the server, and then check if the RPC, the response of the RPC, is different from what we display. If yes, we will update the screen with the aim to keep the data up to date. And obviously, the last step will be to store the fresh data in the browser with the aim to reuse it the next time. A small example in practice, I will open the contact list. It will display Aka Foster as a contact. I will store Aka Foster on the browser. Then in the meantime, someone creates John Doe. I will reopen the contacts list. First, Aka Foster will be displayed. I will retrieve John Doe from the server. Then I will display John Doe. And finally, I will see Aka Foster and John Doe that will be stored in the browser. So that's what we do in practice. The next step is that, okay, how can we store this data? We have two main possibilities. The first one is about the raw data. Basically, we can replicate the Odoo database in the IndexedDB. It's quite easy because we have just to copy-paste the data in the IndexedDB. But the problem is that we have to exploit this data. We have to re-implement the ORM, re-implement the business logic. We will fetch lots of useless data, and we have to maintain, to keep the data and the database scheme up to date. Quite complex to manage. The second option is about storing the RPC response. So the idea is to store what we receive from the server and to reuse it later. Basically, it's very simple because we just rely on the answers, and the web client is totally insensitive to the source. Whatever, if it's the response from the server or from the IndexedDB, is the same for the web client, and there is no change at the web client level. And of course, we can collect the data in real time, very useful with the aim to populate the cache, and it's quite lightweight because we collect only what we need. Obviously, there is a big inconvenience with this. The dataset we collect is incomplete, so lots of features are missing. No search, no pager, and so on. But of course, we choose this option. But let's go for a small demonstration. Here you will see that we are with a database in Odoo here. I will first slow down my network. Let's say 3J. And then I will open the contact list. It will be slow. We can drink a cup of coffee. Still slow. We can open a contact. It's quite slow. Browse a next contact. And so on. As you can see, the user experience is very bad. But if I go back and I come back on my main menu, come back to my contacts, it's immediate. Open the first contact, immediate too. Next, it's very, very fast. Of course, if I try to reach a contact that I never stored before, it will be slow again. Last but not least, I can go offline. Of course, I've come back to the main menu, reopen the contact, it works. Odoo says that I'm offline, but I can still reach all the data I collected previously. So I can browse all the contacts I collected. Of course, a contact which is not collected will not be opened. So in practice, what happens? In the application here, I can see that we have some database created in IndexedDB. The most important for this feature is the RPC database that collects the views, the web read, and the web search read. So as you can see here, we store all what we need to replicate the RPC answers. If I go back on my network and put it on throttling, you can see that if I go to the web read, if I browse the networks and refresh the database, all the response were collected. Regarding the data, it's quite debatable because, of course, we will first load what is stored in the browser storage. Obviously, we can have some flickers if your network is slow. So, for example, here, I will go back here on my main screen, and I will switch from user. Here, another user of my company will create a contact, let's say I run like this. And then, if I unfortunately get a slow network, it will open what is stored in my database, in my browser, and later it will be refreshed with the new contact created by my colleague. If you doesn't like such a feature, what we can do is disabling it by action. So the idea here is to go on the action. So I will open the debug mode. And at the action level here, I can disable data caching for this action. Thereby, you will not store the data in the cache, but you will still get the views, the menu items, transaction, and so on. And I can show you in the database here, in the local browser here, in the application, you have in the localization all the translations that are stored too, and we have in the local storage, we have the menus that are stored. The menus will be moved in the IndexedDB in 19.1. Okay. As you can probably see in the previous screen, all data are encrypted. It means that the user has to be logged in Odoo with them to decrypt what is stored in the browser. This avoids, of course, malicious use of the data that could be browsed by someone else. We used an algorithm to encrypt this, which is the GCM, sorry, and the encryption and decryption time is very fast, so there is no problem regarding the performances. Currently, we focused only on Windows action. So it means that if you have an application that relies on server action, client action, and so on, it will not work. We just manage the Windows action. It means that the field service, CRM application that almost really rely on the server action, it will not work for now. But we are working a lot with them to convert all the server action in Windows action with them to get this feature everywhere. Regarding the views, we only focus on Kanban, list, form. Maybe in the future we will introduce new views such as reporting views, pivot, and graph. We'll see. We are not decided yet. And regarding the scope of the RPCs, we obviously have the get views, web search read, web read group, web read, on-change, and other custom RPCs we are treating one by one. And obviously on our side, and on your side, if you want to benefit from such a feature, you can use this cache with them to store the data in the browser. Obviously, we'll document it in the future. Thereby, you will be able to use it in your own apps and so on. In conclusion, as you can see, the browser storage is very, very powerful. We can rely it to make Odoo very fast, and obviously it will improve the user experience. Because if Odoo is slow, the user experience will be bad, as we see previously in the talk. And this is probably the base from the future offline mode we are working on. And I can't resist to show you some improvement we did the last few days. It's not released yet, it's just a proof of concept, so be indulgent. So here, if I go on the contact list, what I can do is populating the cache with the aim to get all the contacts displayed on the screen directly in my cache. So thereby, if I go in the network with them to go offline, it says I am offline. Okay, the cache was not working. Yep, let me do it again. It's a proof of concept, so it's normal. Yep. Okay, let's do it again. The cache should be populated. Then I go on the network with the M2 for the 3J. It works because I'm 3J. Now I will put on the offline to show you the impact. And then I can browse all my contacts I fetched offline. So it's quite powerful. And we plan to extend this feature with the aim to populate lots of data in your browser, and thereby when we will be disconnected or if you are working offline, it will work and you will be able to consult your data. And maybe the next step will be to manage some other features such as small edits and so on. But the roadmap is not well defined on this base, and then we'll see later. And so if you want to see what we will do, I strongly invite you the next year when we will present what was your progress, and I hope we will be very proud of what we did. So thank you for your attention. If you have questions, don't hesitate to write down in the pad, and then we'll answer them. Thank you again. Non, je pense pas.
Okay, it's on. Yeah. We have several questions. Did it work on mobile and on the mobile apps?
It works on the PWA because we rely on the same technology.
Okay. How Odoo knows when to delete cache data from the browser?
We delete the cache, obviously, when we receive new data with the aim to keep up to date. We delete them if you perform a hard refresh with the aim to empty the cache, obviously. And then for the current user, when we perform some customization, we empty the cache with the aim to get the new values.
The new small offline mode is read-only, or there is also a write?
It's only read-only for the moment. Maybe we will work on the write mode, but it's not the first plan for now.
How do you manage schema changes after a model update to synchronize server-client data?
We don't manage it because we don't synchronize the database scheme. We only synchronize the answers, the response from the RPC calls.
What will be the max size the data could be stored?
It depends on your browser, on your hard disk drive. For example, Chrome can use 80% of your hard disk drive, so it can be huge.
It will be available backported on version 18?
No, it will not backported.
That was the last question.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for your question. If you have if you want more information about the technical details and so on, don't hesitate to find us. We'll stay here just after the session. Thank you again.